Good morning. Today is April 23rd, 2020. This is Clear Passage Prayer Line. The title of the message today is called Almost Heaven. I'm going to tell you guys a story, but in it, just think about it for your give you some points before we start. Those of you that have children, if you could remember you remember holding, if you different ones, you remember holding your finger up and they grab your hand, that little bitty hand, and now it's a big old hand, and a big old the thing that you was holding in your arms is now taller and bigger than you are able to drive. But just remember how little and it started out, and you were just so busy changing diapers and picking up the row up and doing this and doing that. You didn't realize that that was a whisper. That was a moment in time. It was just a brief moment, and it was gone, and it was them. And then they continue to grow, and some of them are some of you children have gone on, and some of them are still here. But even the ones that have gone on, you just have to say, Lord, thank you for the time that I had with them. Thank you for the time that you gave them to me. And then you think about your mothers, and you think of your aunts, and you think of uncles, and you think of friends that are here but that are no longer here. And so I'm going to this is a story that I'm still writing. I've been writing this story for years, but it's just I'm telling you because you'll appreciate it. You'll remember it. I don't have a name for it yet, but it's and then we will do our scriptures after. But this is just to bring a point of remembrance on how, and there's going to be pieces missing because I don't have the whole thing finished yet, but remembrance of how there's something, there's a song called These Are the Good Old Days. You don't know it's a good old day till you're past it, and you go back and go, remember when? Like right now, right today, we can all go back, say, remember when we were going to the movies, or remember when we were going to the restaurant, and the restaurants you used to be able to sit in and eat, and people were walking around, was nothing, no facial mask, everybody was just talking, and that we just took that for granted, like it was just okay. It'll never get back 100% like it was, because we've been exposed to a threat, and we will be conscious of it for a very long time. But that simple thing, and when you look at TV and see crowds of people sitting in a stadium, you go, wow, people are all sitting together, because they used to be able to do that like a few months ago. And those were some good old days. We didn't know those were the good old days. So having that point in mind, these are still some good old days. You don't know it because you don't know what's coming next, but you don't realize this for the moment. I can tell you right now, if you want to live a long time, be grateful. If you want to have more of what you have, whatever, gratitude grows everything. You start paying attention to things. You start paying attention to the flowers and the birds and when people are talking to you, making sure you hug everybody, making sure they know that they know that you love them, and making sure that you're doing all that. You don't, if you keep doing it, it just tends to, the thing you say thank you to stays. Thank you, Lord, for my good. This thing you say thank you to stays. And the thing that you keep feeding with gratitude, that it's just like heaven goes, oh, they paid attention. Let me give them some more. I thank you for my life. Oh, they love. Let me give them some more. So I'm telling you, the thing you pay attention to, that thing grows. Gratitude grows everything. You talk to you when you have children. They have you guys all know the studies that children that don't get held and hugged and talked to and encouraged don't grow the same as the children that do. So it's the same thing about the things about your life. What is coming out of your mouth? Gratitude, blessings. I love you. I'm hugging people there. I wish I could I wish I can get everybody in the whole world one good hug, because hugs heal, and they tell people it's going to be okay. You can say things in a hug that you cannot put into words. You all know that. There's times, especially, and I'm not saying in funerals only, but there's times when you can't tell people anything. They don't want to hear words, but a hug will do it. It'll, and sometimes a long hug, short hugs, but that's a communication. That is not, it's no words, but it does a big job. So figure out how to craft, CRAFT, how to craft this thing called love in your life with everybody. Be intentional about it. Look people in the eyeballs and tell them that you love them. Don't be shy with this stuff. You got plenty of it. You got buckets and buckets of it. It comes down, and however you use all that you got, your bucket will be filled back up by the morning, because you are exposed to a God that has everlasting, unlimited amounts of it. So don't be stingy with it. Just give it away as much as you possibly can. It'll serve you now and it'll serve you later. But we call it almost heaven because if you stop and pay attention to the things that have already happened, the things that have already gone before you. If you have more than one child, look at your children. Look at the different personalities that they have. And God always mixes it up. He don't give you all bad kids. He gives you some good ones, some good sane ones, and then he give you the wild one. But he mixes them up because he has to place them somewhere. So you may not have all, A students. You have one that probably don't even go to class. But Lord Jesus, I don't even want to talk about it. But he mixes it up. He gives you enough to just keep it going. And sometimes he'll put a very refined stone with a rough stone so they can sand each other off. He places people together for certain reasons, and they usually balance each other out. Like if you have sisters, you'll have a wild sister, and then you'll have that conservative, stable sister. Has nothing to do with age, has everything to do with what God is deciding on designing what happens in your life. So he knows these things. And so when I say he already answered your prayers, yesterday we were talking about that. He knew you from the beginning. He knows so much about you that before you hit air on the earth, he already knew what the really wonderful things were about you and how you would. And sometimes children are a blessing to the parent. You keep thinking the parents bless the children. Sometimes children make the parents realize some things. I remember talking to I'll have to get to the real story in just a second, but I remember talking to one of my writers that I was interviewing. And this woman sometimes I talk to writers and they'll have me bawling in tears. They're just like, oh, I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe this woman is or this man is telling me this information. But she had tried to abort her child 3 times. She tried, and every time she got stopped. The first time, I think she had a fever, or she had the flu or something. So if you have fever's too high, they won't give you an abortion. And the second time, something else happened. And the third time, she was a day past the time when they would safely do it, and they told her no. Turned around, this baby was born, and she wound up, this is a true story, she wound up having the bone marrow or the something. There's another story about a bone, but this particular one had something in her system that her mother needed to stay alive. And this child was the only one that had it. And God had to force that woman to receive that child to get blessed so that at the end of the day, he knew how it was all going to work together. So this is what I say about the complications of life. You don't know what God is doing. Let him do it. Relax, let him do it. Seek him first before you start trying to figure it out. Seek him. So I'm going to tell you this story, and it's pieces in it you can relate to, but it is a combination of some things that have all happened, stories I've known, things that have actually happened, but it's a really amazing. So it's just about a family, but it's something for you to look at with your family. Despite everybody has cray in their family, so I'm not talking about the crazy ones. We all have that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about step back and look at the balance. He gave you some crazy. He gave you some sanity. He gave you some friends and neighbors that were saviors to your family. He gave you, if it didn't get born naturally in your family, he gave it to you from somebody else. But just look at what God has done. It's been a masterpiece. So let me tell you a story. So this is about this is about a family that every summer the whole family comes together to come to the house in the summer. It's a older couple that owns big houses. So it's a 3-story big home with water, a body of like a river, no, excuse me, a stream that runs by it, and it's wooded, but it's in the country. And so 3-story house, and then there's a basement. But every summer, all the family members and all their families come together to spend the summer together in this home. And so in the home, you have they come, and so they'll stay. When they come together, they'll stay like in 4 stories. So they'll stay. So at the bottom will be like the younger guys will be there. On the first floor will be the married the older women, the older people will be on the first floor. The second floor will be the girls, all the girls, and on the third floor will be the another group of family members. But they just all come together. So it might be like 30, 40 of them all, but it's a big house. So in this home, and this part happens what happened in my family, that they would be cooked in during the holiday time when people were there. The early morning, the mothers would wake up and they would be just praying through the house or praying. But they like 5 in the morning. You have those people that hit their knees 4 or 5 in the morning and they're talking to the Lord. And then the second time when people would wake up, they would start cooking breakfast. So you have a first breakfast, then you have a second breakfast, which is later in the day. Then they would stop making breakfast and start for lunch, and then they would have snacks, and then you would have supper, and then you would have a late night meal. But it would be food all the time. Different ones would make dishes. And so when you live in the country area, everything is pretty fresh. So everything is picked and then it's cooked. So it's not like you have to go to the store and get prepackaged. Everything is really fresh. But they would cook in waves, but in the process they would all come together. But in the process of doing that, there was that's where you would have the remembrance of who was there, because there's some people in your families right now. There's some relatives, grandparents, great grandparents that you could barely remember them now, but they were alive when most of you can remember maybe 100 years of people that have been in your life that you are processing and doing some things that they taught your family to do. You don't even know who they are, but they were there and they became the process by which you became you. Somebody fed into to you before you became you. So you didn't just pop up out the blue. You didn't just fall off a tree. You were carefully crafted. There are people in your lineage that have lived their lives and spoken to their children, and their children have spoken to their children, and somewhere down that process, here you came, but you didn't just pop up by mistake. God carefully crafted you into a situation. He carefully brought you in and laid you into this family or laid you into these people. And you can remember, just think back, grandparents and great grandparents, grandfathers, and you can remember when people got really old and could barely move around or had that how old people had that far away look in their eyeballs, and you can remember that. But little did you realize that those people and their life stories and their life blood fed into your parents, who then turned around and fed into you, and then you are now feeding into your children, and they're going to feed into theirs. And then that whole little system, that whole little process of life is just, it's a combination of something called wonderful. It's called miraculous. And God was always thinking of you. When he gave you that grandmother, when he gave you that grandfather, when he gave you those sisters and those brothers, when he gave you those moments at your church, when he gave you those times where he sat and talked to you and you didn't realize he was watching, he has always had you in mind. So you have to realize how covered and how blessed and how carefully crafted your life was and is, and how beautifully appreciated, how much he absolutely loves you. So getting back to my story, they would do this, and the reason they would have all these people come together is because it would create the memories. for the summer. The kids would finally, cousins would meet cousins, and people would know who the other people are. Recipes. There's recipes right now that you can't remember because you just always thought grandma would be there to do it. And even though she wrote the recipe down and you try to make it and it's kind of close to what she did, it's not exactly. So you see how people come and they come through your life and they go, and even though they try to leave what they left, it's not the same. It's that one time. So for me, my grandmother used to have this, send us, she lived in Dallas, Texas, and she would send us these tins, and she would have the thing I just didn't like, a fruitcake, but she would also have divinity. She would have she made homemade divinity. She would have brownies. She would have it all layered out in this big tin, and she left us the recipe, but we none of us have ever been able to make it like she made it. Some of you were able to sit and she showed you how she made it. Take the time to pass on as much as you can to your children as to what you know. Sit and tell them the stories about your family, because once they're gone, the story dies with the storyteller unless the storyteller tells a story. Unless they share that information, it doesn't stick around. You don't have it. And they can't see what has happened. And do you see the richness that's already been implanted and passed on in your life while we live day to day? We skip over the big things and don't realize I am a generation of a generation of a generation. I didn't just pop out off of I didn't fall off of a branch. I literally was carefully planned, carefully brought in, carefully taught, carefully given what I have been given. If you don't take a dime out of this earth realm, think of how rich your life already is. How much, the fact that people took the time to name you, they took the time to call you by something, whatever they called you by. They took the time to talk about you. When I say that, they talk about, oh, this one's going to be that, or that one's going to be whatever. But they sit in, ponder you. There was a village of people that came to make you to be who you are. And the same process, by now we're having people be able to stay home, and people are able to now focus in and do the village. They're able to sit, mothers and fathers are probably now looking at their children for the first time. They're hearing things and seeing things and knowing things and talking to them like they've never been able to talk to them, because everybody was so busy running here, there, running. Now everybody's still. Now you see your child for the first time. You see your teenager. You see things you need to pay attention to. You see things you need to work on. They're finally seeing some stuff. So God is this. It hasn't all been bad. He's making you focus in. Be still. He's making you focus in so you can now say, "Oh, I'm having a moment. I'm having a moment." Now, let me just explain what that means when you say having a moment. Having a moment is when you can, right now in your life, you can look back and you have had some incredible moments where either you were outside in nature, you were listening to a song, you saw your whole family sitting together, you did something, you were able to have an experience, your husband, your wife, your children, but you remember, if you go, just think, you have had some incredible, wonderful experiences. Those are not by mistake. That's like living art. God gave you something, and it's a memory, and you can remember that. So these are the gratitude. This is when I say gratitude. If you, where you are now, you can actually go, Lord, I don't know how many more days I have, but I thank you for what you've already done, what you've already doing. Thank him for the aspects and things about your children. Thank him for giving you the mother that he gave you. Thank him for giving you the grandparents that he gave you. Not that they were perfect. The imperfect ones are big teachers, because you can learn. You learn a lot, but you can see what he has done. Just look. Just look at your life. What has he done? And just thank him for that. So let me get back to my story. So in this particular story, there were many family members that would come together. And when they would come together and do that wave of cooking, they could exchange recipes. The guys could be able to go fishing. The kids would be able to play, but they had a chance to come together and see who everybody else was. Not perfect, obviously, but to see who everybody else was. And right now, we don't do it so much in the city, but in the country and in places where people have time to actually come together, that's where you find out who your lineage is. That's how you find out how you have that nose, how you have those eyes, who has whose hair, who's whatever, and you can hear conversations where you hear people talking, and you can hear the cadence of family groups have a cadence in their conversation. So even though you don't know them by name, you can tell by their behavior they came from which clan, tribe, etc. that they came from in terms of family, because there's a familiarity that comes along with the way that everybody talks to everybody. Like you can look on the call right now, you can listen to Lori, you can listen to Christine, and you cannot almost barely tell the difference. That's what I'm talking about, the cadence of conversation, of how people are people belong to other people. People are attached to other people. And likewise, God is attached to us. We are his and he's ours. And he has been trying and has done all the times of your life to bless you, to bless you, and to bless you. So while he is blessing you, and while he has carefully crafted your life and carefully done miraculous things in your life back to back to back, open your mouth at all points in time moving forward for the rest of your life and just say thank you. Thank you, Lord. I see that. I see it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. However many ways you can say thank you, because you don't know what all he's done for you. You have no idea. You have no idea what he's actually done. And just thank him and praise him. So we're getting ready to read these scriptures about gratitude. I wanted you to get that. And this story that I was telling you about, it's going to be really good. I haven't finished writing all the rest of it yet, but it's really is just the visual of how it came to be, and some of those people that'll be in it are actually family members, things that really have happened. I'm just putting them, combined them together. But the thing that made me pay attention is that you have to realize that you were placed exactly where you were placed to do exactly what he has you doing at such a time as this, exactly when you're doing it, and that you are not a mistake. Even if some of us were born in unusual circumstances, but where you're not a mistake, you were meant to be here. You were meant to be breathing right at this point in time. And so live your life unabashed, live it as aggressively as you can, breathe as deeply as you can, and love as hard as you can, because this is a moment in time. It will not be here all the time. Just like last 6 months change now, your life can change that same way. People are here and then they're gone. And you always say, I wish I had said this. I wish I had told him that. I wish. Don't wish. Do. Be. To now is the time. This moment is what you have. And this is an incredible moment. This is an incredible opportunity. This is an incredible life. You live it, and then you're going to step over and you will actually be in heaven. But right now, this is almost heaven. It's almost. If you look at what God has done, it's almost. It really, really is almost heaven. Because whatever he hasn't given you, he told you he's going to trust him on it. And if you look back and see what he's already done, it'll just take your breath away on the beauty that God has put in your life already.